and good evening to you wherever and whenever you are joining us. Welcome to our latest edition of What Caught My Eye, or WCME Sports. As always, I'm your host, the coach Nick Vesci. I'm joined by the boy Stephen Vesci.
What up?
And the man Stephen Comlow.
Hello.
If you're new to our program, we like to think of ourselves as the sports show about sports. There is no politically driven ulterior motives on this show. We just like to talk about what happens between the lines, because at the end of the day, that's why we're sports fans. It's not about what TMZ might look at or what someone tells us you should think. It's about what we see on the field and try to put that in a little perspective for you guys. Our other main goal, is that each person listening here learns something new that they hadn't thought of or even broached before. And I think we do a pretty good job of tackling some of those things. Maybe just some random stat, but again, at the end of the day, if you learn something new and you're entertained and you filled up a good chunk of your time feeling happy about what you watched and relaxed, I think we've done a good job about that, kind of propelling the fandom that is sports, right? Before we get into our top catch of the week, just a reminder to follow us on all of our socials. That's on X, on Instagram, and on Facebook at WCME_sports. You can go to our website, WCMEsports.com. Our episodes drop every Wednesday at noon on Spotify and on YouTube. Now, without further ado, our top catch this week, we turn to the world of college football. This was Rivalry Week. If you listened to our show last week, we did our favorite college football rivalries in honor of the upcoming weekend that we just saw. And this Rivalry Week did not disappoint. It was awesome. It was fun. I wished for a little more chaos than what we saw, because I do love the upsets, because I think this is the best time to pull an upset, is when there's a rivalry and you can, use all of your emotion, take some talent disparity out of it. But it doesn't matter. Still some awesome games this weekend. And the first game we're going to start with, I think it just has to be the legendary Georgia Tech game that happened between the hedges down in Athens. If you don't know the nickname of that rivalry, Georgia Tech, it is called Clean Old-Fashioned Hate. Through the years, they've had some epic battles and some, fisticuffs and Donniebrooks, break out during this rivalry. And, for the most part, kind of in our lifetime, it has been super dominated by Georgia, because there had, again, talent disparity. Georgia Tech had been up and down, really. Sometimes they would go through lulls where they were lucky to win 3-4 games, and so they were just due to get blown up by Georgia. But this Georgia Tech team, led by Brent Key, is that his name?
Yes.
Brent Key. Very physical, very disciplined, and could play with anyone in the country. So this was shaping up to be one of the better versions of this rivalry that we had seen, and it did not disappoint. It was nuts. It was bananas, if you will. So if you missed it, Georgia was down 17-0 at halftime, right? But receiver Dominic Leavitt caught 2 touchdown passes from Carson Beck 2.5 minutes apart at the end of regulation. So it was very quick, which was really the only way that they were going to get these points, because Georgia Tech was controlling the ball so much. And that forced OT versus Georgia Tech. And I think a big reason they forced OT from that, as some sort of military helicopter hovers over my house right now, right?
Wait.
You know what that sound was?
Freedom.
That's freedom right there.
Chicken spears.
Yes, Georgia Tech scored their last touchdown, and I thought way too soon. Not that they could help it. They had such a great drive, but it left so much time left and gave Georgia the ability to score those 2 touchdowns back-to-back to force OT. And we saw them play 8 overtimes, right? If you don't know the overtime rules in college, they used to be the greatest ever, and now they're just kind of middle of the road. So your first OT, each team gets 1 possession from the 25-yard line. You score a touchdown, you can kick your extra point, go for 2, whatever you want. Second OT, same thing, but you have to go for 2. Third OT and beyond is alternating 2-point conversions, which
One of the dumbest things I've ever seen.
it's
And you have to walk the length of the field.
it's so stupid.
So dumb. They did it so, the point of them doing it was, well, we're going to avoid, 8 overtime games, and we're going to get this to finish quicker, and it'll be a faster product, and people will, go home. It'll be, a quick one team wins, one team loses. Well, when you walk the length of the field, you give each team a timeout, and you go to a commercial break between each 2-point conversion attempt. It's not quicker.
Well,
now it's just all commercials.
Quicker as opposed to number of plays. More sponsorship time, more ad time, more money gets fed into that.
It's
right?
really stupid. It's someone I saw someone say this is basically the equivalent of alternating free throws in basketball and then walking the length of the court between each of them.
Because it's not the equivalent of PKs in soccer, right? It's not that at all, because that stays on one end. Goes pretty quick. Penalties go pretty quick in soccer. Yeah. These took forever, waiting on some play. And what's unfortunate is that when you condense the field like that, the number of plays you can really run is shrinking. Yeah. It shrinks. And what happens is coaches have decided, let's get really innovative and creative to try to, wrangle with the fact that they have that extra defender in the back of the end zone that shrinks the field and makes it harder to find space. And so that's why you see a lot of these plays fail, because it's just harder. There's not enough room. And sometimes the best play is just to turn around and just hand the ball off.
Yeah, which is what Georgia did to end the game.
Exactly.
I'm shocked that
Georgia Tech didn't do it sooner.
Georgia Tech, yeah. I mean, you're a running team. You built your team off of running the football. Haynes King is not I mean, his shoulder's been messed up, right? His right arm's been messed up for half the year.
Yeah.
I mean, take him and run power or run Jamal Haynes and do something. And I don't know, you had 8 attempts in overtime?
Here's
7
why.
out of them need to be running.
Here's why, boy. It's like we've talked about with drafting players in the first round, right? You're going to draft them based off of measurables. So if you're wrong, it doesn't look as bad as if you just drafted some random kid from some random school you thought was better, right? It's the same thing. If I go out there and my first 2-point conversion is just a straight plain run play and it gets stopped and we lose, I'm going to get hammered for that decision. And that's why you can't get hammered for running all these cool plays. Look how much we're trying, right? We didn't just phone it in and say we give up, let's just hand them the ball, which is idiotic, because anyone who actually knows football realizes that that's not necessarily the case, that running these gimmick plays aren't the best option. And like you said, boy, what happened is by the time we got to the 8th OT, the team who ran the ball for their try was Georgia, and they won because of it.
Well, Georgia Tech for the first time. Georgia Tech tried to run for the first time.
Yeah, but that was after a penalty, and everyone knew that play was coming. Correct. And it wasn't like if you line up and you can line up in a lot of these different formations to run the ball. If you notice a lot of the defenses, especially the defensive fronts that these two teams were running for these conversions, were light. Like they weren't up there with like a bare defense, 5-6 down linemen. Most of the time they had 3 down linemen. You mean tell me you couldn't walk up there and hand the ball off and get that? Even out of your shotgun spread formation, you got to have the ability to do that if you're able to move it in other scenarios where they're crowding the box more. And because they were in those, not necessarily prevent defenses, but pass-oriented defenses, because they knew all they're running a pass, right? And like we said, it turned out the first team to go up to their try and run a 2-point conversion on their opening try was Georgia in the 8th overtime. And they converted and they won, right? It became the second longest college football game ever in 8 overtimes. Georgia wound up winning 44-2, like we said, between the hedges over their hated rivals, the Yellow Jackets. That does lead me to my first question. What was the longest game ever?
It's Penn State and Illinois, I believe, right?
Yes, and I believe
that score
9 OTs, and I think one team, 21-19, I think is the score. One team broke 20. Just get rid of it. Get rid of the rule. It's terrible. It's awful.
Yeah, but can we? Yeah,
you're going to shorten the game actually if you have them go from the 25-yard line in, because you got to sustain something, and eventually, if you get stopped, you send a college kicker out there. And they've been pretty good this year, but
I saw a lot of college kickers miss this weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah, but can we go back to that game though? Like, besides the overtime and the shenanigans there, Georgia Tech was the more physical, I guess better in the trenches team against Georgia in Georgia or in Athens, and that's I don't think you've ever said that. Like, I don't think we would have ever said that.
No.
An ACC team was the bigger, tougher, more physical team than the big bad SEC and the top of the class SEC team, which should go to show you. I mean, Georgia Tech should have won that game.
They should have, yeah.
But that should go to show you that there's parity in college football, but instead we just ignore it. So many people just ignore it. They go, great win for Georgia, which it was a great win because we said it before. Like Georgia Tech's not a slouch, you better bring it.
Yeah.
But if you go to the differences of conferences, Georgia Tech is in the middle of the ACC, and Georgia is the best of the best, right? And that was a home game for Georgia. We need to acknowledge the parity of college football, and it's really annoying that like these pundits keep going and just shilling out for the SEC, and it keeps happening in the playoff committee and everything. But, I mean, there's no respect on any of the other conferences unless your name is Ohio State.
Labels disable.
Yeah.
Is the thing, and that's essentially what they've labeled conferences as XYZ, regardless of,
it means more.
Yeah, right. So they've labeled that the ACC as such.
And I'm assuming you're going to go to the next game, which is another ACC-SEC matchup.
Actually, I wasn't, but I will go to that game next.
Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville stomped Kentucky. No, I believe you're talking about South Carolina, Clemson.
Yes.
Before we get there, I did want to note, Kirby Smart did so many things in that game that were so brilliant, but then so many things that weren't. I've never seen a coach do so many great things to keep his team in the game, because without them they would have lost, but then done so many things that if he hadn't done those things, they would have won. Like going for two earlier in that game.
Made no sense.
I still don't understand it. It had to have been some sort of spreadsheet that he's looking at. I don't get it, or he just had a feel.
I think it was more of just a frustration thing.
I thought about that too, but then he's not a coach that does that. Good coaches don't do that. Maybe get frustrated and like spur them. They keep their cool, right? So that didn't make sense. But then in overtimes, all those overtimes, each team gets one timeout. And he took that timeout every single time when Georgia was on defense. And it's freaking brilliant for a couple of reasons. One, it takes Georgia Tech out of any rhythm they might have had offensively. But two, most importantly, it takes Georgia Tech out of their A play. Because at this level, when you call a timeout on a play like that, the other team is not going to come back out in the same formation and run the same play. They're not. They're going to change the play for whatever reason, right? So our formation, we've got to change the play, even though we haven't done anything yet. So he's taking those timeouts knowing that he's doing it just to force Georgia Tech to change their play, to go to a play that they didn't want to go to in the first place. And that is freaking brilliant, right? That's what separates people like Kirby Smart from other coaches in the world.
Yeah, why didn't Key do the same thing? Because you're literally watching the guy over there do this. Like, what's going on.
Probably he's never thought. Maybe he's never thought. I don't know. He's a very good coach.
Coach. I think he got frustrated. I think he was like, "Let's just end this. Let's go." Like, enough of the timeouts. Let's go. Like, I don't know. I don't know why he wouldn't do the same thing. You're given that timeout. That needs to change too, by the way. You can't give these guys timeouts for every single overtime if it's all 2-point conversions. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought it was brilliant. You give him the time, like don't deride Kirby Smart for this. This is Belichickian. Belichickian at its finest.
I don't like the rule, but I applaud Smart for doing it. It's there. Do it.
You could argue that won them the game, because who knows if he lets them stay in one of their top plays that they had before, if they convert that, right?
I would have also liked Georgia Tech to have gone for 2 when they scored on their first overtime, I believe. I would have liked them to see that go for 2. Like, you're on the road. Well. You're on the road. I feel like the game was slipping. You're on the road. You need one play, right, to win this. I would have gone for 2.
Yeah. I kind of agree that was at least a decision, like a thought process.
The longer you play with Georgia and their superior athletes, right, the worse it's probably going to get.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw it. It did feel like the more this is going, there's no way that Georgia's not going to win this game.
That typically ends up happening with in order to pull off the upset, you got to do something like the longer that game goes on, the more Georgia's in the advantage, right? It's the same thing with like series, like a 7-game series in other sports. Like, the longer the series goes on, usually the quote-unquote better team is going to win.
Yes. Yeah. Like you said, we'll move on to the other SEC-ACC matchup that I'm sure caught your eye, boy, and that was South Carolina and Clemson.
I was locked in.
Yeah, South Carolina, we were talking about, they're a good team. Lenora Sellers, really electric player.
Unbelievable, yes. That dude.
So he's their quarterback, if you didn't know. He scored the game-winning 20-yard touchdown run with a little over a minute left as the Gamecocks defeated the Clemson Tigers in Death Valley 17-14. South Carolina scored 10 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to earn that victory in that Palmetto State rivalry game. And yes, Lenora Sellers he's a dude.
He's one of the best runners of a football from the quarterback position I've seen in a while. Maybe Anthony Richardson, but I think he might be better the way he was moving. I could not believe the number of Clemson defenders that looked like they had him bottled up multiple times that he just slips away and runs for 25 yards and a touchdown. By the way, every touchdown in that game was scored by a running quarterback. Klubnik scored twice running the football, and then Sellers had his 2 touchdowns, and they had a field goal. I was just looking at I was like, Clemson's done a really good job, and then they've slipped up on 3 plays against Sellers, and that's what happened. Yeah. And I'm watching that last play. I'm like, there's one guy on the field. He's going to take the ball. All eyes need to be on him. If he throws the ball and they score a touchdown, so be it. I don't care. Make him throw the ball. I can't have him do what he did, but that's also just the freak athlete that dude is, and the incredible runner of the football he is, that he was able to do that and go through 7 Clemson defenders.
Yeah. He's emerged as maybe the breakout star of this college football season, just for the fact that I don't know anyone who had him on their radar at all for anything or knew about him. I didn't. I never heard of him, but you know the name now. Like you said, he's a dude. He was the dude out there on the field featuring probably multiple professionals, right? So pretty impressive. Good for South Carolina. That moved them to 9-3 on the year and at least put them for now in the conversation to keep playing more games.
They won 6 straight, including A&M, Clemson. I think there's someone else in there that beat those.
There's someone else. I forget. But yeah, no, they've been, and some of these
Vanderbilt, Missouri, and Oklahoma. So they're
destroyed Oklahoma.
There's 6 games in a row that they won. So they lost 2 straight to Ole Miss and Alabama.
Alabama game was tight, but they got killed by Ole Miss.
They got destroyed by Ole Miss, 27-3. Went on their tear by blowing out Oklahoma, blowing out Texas A&M, blowing out Vanderbilt, surviving Missouri, and then you had your cupcake game in November, Wofford, before you played Clemson, and going on the road to Clemson and getting that win. Those are pretty big wins.
Yes, they are. So I mean, they're probably the hottest team in the country right now. They're
Baylor.
Baylor, but no one gives a crap about.
I know, but that's what bothers me. No one cares about Baylor, man. Come on. Baylor won 6 straight.
Yeah, but they lost too much. They're too inconsistent. What they saved Dave Aranda's job is what they did.
They did, yes, they did. They kind of did what West Virginia did last year, but that doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. Now, you talked about running SEC quarterbacks. Another note here from Jalen Milrow of Alabama, maybe the next best or the best running quarterback we have out there, because at any point in time, I think he's the best athlete on the field. Pure and simple. You watch him look like he's not running that fast, and he's leaving guys in the dust who are going to be at the next level, right? Well, Jalen Milrow on Saturday became the first Alabama player in history with 250 pass yards, 100 rush yards, and 3 touchdowns in a game. Right? That's pretty crazy that he's the only one that's ever done that in that storied program. As the Crimson Tide defeated Auburn 28-14 in this year's rendition of the Iron Bowl, Milrow became the 4th quarterback in SEC history with 20 rush touchdowns in a season, which I thought was interesting that there's been that many quarterbacks. But when you go through it, there's, you think maybe Tebow did it.
Or Mansell.
Or
Cam Newton.
Jaden Daniels maybe. Cam Newton probably. You're right. Cam Newton probably a good one. So he's on the short list of some of the elite players who've ever played in that conference and moved the Tide to 9-3. And they're still in it for the conversation to play more games because they won't be in the SEC championship game. Moving on, I went with some Big Ten stuff. We'll go from the fastest, runniest, highest scoring games to, boy, is this still football? Is this not soccer type of game? And so I turned my attention to the Iowa-Nebraska game.
Oh, hell yeah.
They hate each other. I forget what their rivalry is called. They probably got a good name for it. But Iowa was down 10 at halftime, 10-0. And they scored 13 unanswered points in the second half, which included Drew Stevens' walk-off 53-yard field goal to beat the Cornhuskers 13-10. That was awesome.
That was in 10-degree weather, too.
Yes, which makes that kick 53 yards when you're kicking a rock is an incredible kick.
As Kamlo knows, the ball doesn't travel as much in the cold after you play golf.
It dies. It flight. It hooks to the left. That game is called the Heroes game, by the way.
The Heroes game.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's been called that since 2011.
I like it. Well, Iowa won this version of the Heroes game 13-10. That was a fun game to watch. Another crazy game. Go to the ACC now. Syracuse. They trailed 21-0 in the second quarter, and then they mounted the largest comeback in school history as they went on to defeat Miami 40-38. Again, largest comeback in school history. That's nuts, right? We just, I love the history-making things. But Kyle McCord, the Syracuse quarterback, he had 380 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. He became the first Orange quarterback, so QB for the Orange, not the other way around. The first Orange quarterback to pass for more than 4,000 yards in a season, and his 28 touchdown passes are a Syracuse single-season record. And we're talking about a program that Donovan McNabb played for, right? The real Donovan McNabb, not the one selling whatever McGriddles.
I'm loving it.
He's not Donovan McNabb. Spurns!
By the way, McCord led the nation in passing.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
He's a good player. But more importantly with this win, it knocked Miami out of the ACC title game. They finished the regular season at 10-2, will not get to play another game outside of a bowl game now, and they await their fate as the College Football Playoff Committee decides who will be and claim those spots. Syracuse moved into the top 25 in the AP poll, which is pretty cool. They finished their season at 9-3. It's
a great year.
Didn't see that coming. Yeah, you got the best passer in the country, arguably,
I think,
right?
Who's their coach? Is it Fran Brown? I believe he was on Dabo's staff.
He said something.
Yeah, he was like, Dabo, I
got you in the championship game. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Damn.
But yeah,
because that South Carolina loss out of conference doesn't matter.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't make a difference with that.
It's just that was literally just a bragging rights. Like you get to stay in the discussion for an at-large bid. But now Clemson, even with losing that game, they're still in the ACC championship, and it's when you're in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. They amazingly right. They're still in the conversation with that and have a chance to control their own destiny, right? Which I think is pretty cool. Moving on, maybe my favorite result from this past weekend. Dominic Zavada kicked the game-winning 21-yard field goal with 45 seconds left as the Wolverines defeated the heavily favored Ohio State Buckeyes 13-10 at the Horseshoe. It's the first time since 1988 to 1991, that Michigan has beaten Ohio State 4 times in a row. Michigan closed it as a 20.5-point underdog, which makes it the largest upset for them in terms of victory since 1978. Wolverines. It was awesome.
It has
better
been
than Red Dawn out there.
A Red Dawn.
But
how does that game happen? 20.5 point favorite. The Michigan's team, not great this year.
No, not by any stretch of the imagination. Struggle
the chaos after that game was that was like its own TV show.
Yeah, but that's
oh my god.
There had to have been something going around and
players got pepper
college
sprayed.
Circles.
I was about to ask Kamala about this as someone in this line of duty here. How do you feel about the pepper spray?
I would rather be tased than pepper sprayed.
Really?
100%. Because the pepper spray, it'll go away, or you think it goes away, but it's still in your pores. So, if you forget about it and you go to shower, or you don't shower properly, it all just washes down and reactivates. You think anyone's taking a cold shower after a winter rivalry game? No, those showers are hot and activating. Everything burns.
No, I don't like the trend of let's plant our flag on the other team's logo when we
too many
win
people
our
are
rivalry.
doing that.
It loses its this one really was the only one where I thought, okay, that's all right. I didn't have an issue with it. Everyone else, come on now.
The trident of Arizona State. If you have a trident, you have to do it.
Is that what they did?
Yeah, the trident. They put the trident into the logo.
Rick, where did you get a trident?
Forks up, baby.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That is kind of cool, right? If you had a Florida State spear and you just ran by and threw a spear in the ground.
Yeah. Well,
But
also,
the issue is it's like, oh, let's put it and let's stomp on the logo and dance around. Like,
but also, I get it.
Tribe.
I don't like it either, really. But at the end of the day, though, if you're the home team that this has happened to, like now you decide to show fight.
Yeah.
What happened on the field? Like, defending your house on the field. Like, you lost the game. Like, go back to the locker room. It's over, dude.
I agree with that. Also,
most people can handle we got outplayed versus we got disrespected and did nothing about it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to say they got put in a position where they had to save face. My thing is like the coaches need to be better and just you know what, like
not give them the opportunity. Like Sarkisian didn't give his team the opportunity.
And
why let your players like poke that hornet's nest? You know what I mean? Like there's just so many variables. Like I would imagine and I would hope that if you were to like tell those coaches like if things get out of control after this game, the cops have been authorized to just start spraying OC spray. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to let your players do that. Like, yes, I get it. They're kids. This is probably the biggest game they've played in, but, like, grow the fuck up. You know what?
Yeah,
like
these are not really kids
Sports
anymore.
are supposed to be molders of men. Sports are supposed to be molders of men. And we're just like we're letting them go out there and act like boys. You let your game do the talking already.
Yeah,
hand the ref the ball, walk off, point at the logo on your way out. You know,
yeah, but boy, like you said, they're
professional athletes.
They're not the average 21-year-old right now in our society is the least immature 21-year-old in the history of our society.
Probably, but these
But
guys are professional athletes now.
I know, but you're trying to ask, like Kamala said, your coach needs to be the one because you're trying to ask these kids who should be acting this way but haven't been taught the skills.
Oh yeah, I mean if you looked at
to act that way, right? These kids don't have the skills to put that thought process through. But we're just going to assume that they will. The coaches need to be out there and to get their teams off the freaking field and into the tunnel and celebrate in the locker room. Right? It shouldn't be a public celebration like that either. You should get your trophy, hold it up, pass it around the team, and then get to the locker room. And the opposing team shouldn't even be out there either, right?
No,
the losing team should be off the field as well.
Yes.
So you have that needs to be taken care of and ironed out. But the whole trend of let's plant a logo or a flag in the logo and stomp around it is it's childish. It's ridiculous.
But
it's get the thought process. But it's one of those things. It's looking for clicks. It's from the generation that is looking for clicks. That hey, if we post this on TikTok, I'll get a lot of views and shit like that, right? And this is the type of behavior that attracts views and viewership and ratings and maybe some sponsorship on my YouTube channel, right? Things like that. So that's where I think why we saw this happen. To be honest, is that
it steals a moment from the team and makes it about the one individual. I'm the guy who planted the flag in the jersey. You know what I mean? And
it steals the win.
Okay, it's not okay. Like I think it needs to start and end with the adults on the sideline. You know what I mean?
No, you're right. This needs to be said before the game started. It needs to be said during the week of practice that when we win, we're not doing this. We're going to win with class and this and this and this, right? And that starts even like the whole year before.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's one of those things. It needs to stop happening because it's an annoying trend.
Yeah.
But you understand like the reflex from it. But again, it's not something that is really called for. It takes away from your win because now the headline is brawl breaks out. It's not Michigan puts Ohio State in their fucking place and might kick them out of the playoff, right? It's not that.
As a fan,
it's about
too,
brawl breaks out. And
as a fan, too, I can't watch highlights. You have any idea how many highlights from games I saw this weekend?
None.
That
brawls
ended with like flags being planted. Like it's overplayed at this point. Like
yes,
get over it, move on, find a new thing. Like, can we just have like the viral trend just be like shake the quarterback's hand and walk off and like let's on to the next one. Like we need more we're on to Cincinnati mentality in college. Like, oh my god, it's just so annoying, bro. it's one of the reasons why it's just so hard to watch.
Yeah, well, I would say raise your kids better. Moving on to a positive note here. In their 133rd season of college football existence, the Iowa State Cyclones reached the 10-win plateau for the first time in program history with a 29-21 victory over Kansas State. Do you remember what the rivalry is called? Iowa State, Kansas State? Went through it last week, I think.
Oh my gosh. Sorry.
Farmageddon, baby.
Yeah,
Iowa State won Farmageddon to get to that 10-win plateau. Their fans stormed the field, which I was actually okay with. It's a pretty monumental thing. First time getting there, right? This is arguably the best season in program history. If you look at it from that standpoint, they're going to be playing in the Big 12 championship game with the chance to go to the playoff.
Nick, they never won 10 games in a season.
Yeah.
It's not arguably the best season in program history. It is the best season in program history.
De facto.
Yeah. So I was okay with that rushing of the field, even though normally in that situation it wouldn't call for it with where they were ranked and all that. But when you
it had nothing to do with who they beat, like ranked wise or anything like that. It had nothing to do with that. It was winning the 10th game and going to actually they didn't know if they were going to the conference championship at that point. It was mostly just winning the 10th game because they needed help from BYU and Houston.
Correct.
To go to the conference championship.
Correct.
Big 12 was all jacked up.
All jacked up. But all, like you said before, the Big 12 has been a lot of fun to watch. Can't knock that.
I knew that from the start of the season. And this is because I've watched a lot more Big 12 than the average bear because of West Virginia. So I'll always, watch more of those games than probably the average person. But the Big 12, year in, year out, it's always a grind, and especially when they had the round robin years because you had to play every single team.
Yeah.
It was always a grind. Like, no matter what, game you had, it didn't matter who you were playing. It was always you could win or lose. Like, you better show up. And it's like that again. The Big 12, you better show up every single time you play. Like, if you think about the Big 12, Texas won the Big 12 once in the last 15 years. They're in the conference championship game now in the SEC, right? Oklahoma hadn't won it in the last 3 years. They beat Alabama by 24 points, right? Those are the two teams that left the Big 12. The Big 12 is wild and wonderful and awesome. And I know that's the state logo for West Virginia, wild and wonderful. But
so when you look at the Big 12, I went through this the other day. Of all the conferences in the country, the Big 12 has the second most teams with 8 or more wins, which I think if you got 8 wins, you're a pretty solid team, right? The number one conference is the SEC. The SEC, I think, has 9 teams with 8 or more. The Big 12 has 8.
And the Big 12 plays 9 conference games instead of 8.
Yeah. So they lose one of those Wofford,
Correct.
Mercer, Chattanooga blowout games. Right.
Correct. Yeah.
So
the Big 12 is really the Big 12 just continues to get disrespected, and someone needs to fight the good fight for the Big 12 because there's big time football there, and we just ignore it because you know what one of the biggest problems was the Big 12, it's that South Park flipping the pyramid like we talked about last time. The team that was predicted to finish first finished second to last, and the team that was predicted to finish last. It finished tied for first. Arizona State finished tied for first. Utah finished, I think, second to last, right?
Yeah.
And Oklahoma State, who was one of the teams predicted to win it.
Dead last. They didn't even win a conference game.
They didn't even win a conference game, right? So if you had, let's say Oklahoma State and Utah were 10-2, all of a sudden both those teams are probably in the playoff.
Or at least in the conversation without having to win their conference title. Yeah, I mean, we said this before earlier in the year. Where you start in the rankings in college football matters more than any other collegiate sport, really, for whatever reason. Like you see it in basketball. I think maybe because basketball plays enough games that it always will even out.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
And you get that NCAA tournament with such a big field that it'll still even out. Like, okay, even if you got into the field and you were, pre-seeded ranked 2, but you wound up being a 7th seed in the tournament and you make a run, well, hey, look, it's because they that's whatever reason they were ranked number 2 to start the year, right? So but in football, you don't have the opportunity to have a 68-team field, right? And so we have our best thing here with 12, and it's still going to come down to that. But at least with the 12 teams, there's more teams still alive. Whereas you had the 4 teams, there were like 6 teams to start the year that had a shot, and outside of that, no one was going to get there, even if they went undefeated. You had to get into the club first to have a shot. So at least we have that. But
do you want to look at the bracket? Because the playoff committee, like the rankings came out.
Not yet. Let's finish up. Got some more games. Some fun stuff happened. Tennessee Vandy this year felt like a best time ever that Vandy could pull that upset, especially they're playing in Nashville where they played Texas tough and beat Bama. Vandy was up 14-0, but Texas came back to beat them 36-23. It's the first time the Volunteers have won after trailing by 14 or more points since 2017. They had lost 33 straight games, trailing by 14 or more, which seems crazy for a team that's had such a high-powered offense that you couldn't come back down 2 touchdowns. Like, yes, 2 touchdowns is a lot, but it's also not. It's 2 plays, technically, right? So, pretty amazing there. That, for the most part, all but clinched a playoff spot for Tennessee. You got to think. The way they've been ranked and evaluated, and the way their defense is, and the way they run the ball. Speaking of another team that it's definitely clinched a spot. Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish, they had a 100-yard and a 99-yard interception return for touchdowns. So 2 interceptions returned for touchdowns, 99 and 100 yards, respectively. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, Brad.
In their 49-35 win at USC. The Irish are the first team this century, in the 21st century, for those of you watching years from now, in the 21st century, to have 2 interception returns for touchdowns of 99 yards or more in the same game. It's the first time they have beaten USC in LA since 2018.
Yeah, I think Brad Nessler was doing that game, right?
Yeah, it was on CBS.
CBS, yeah. He after the 99-yarder, he was like, I think he said, can't get any longer than that. Like, what a play. And then literally, like, the next drive, he goes, oh, well, it did get longer. It's 100 yards.
Yeah, that's Notre Dame. You said what? Baylor's hot, South Carolina's hot. Notre Dame is on that short list of sizzling hot teams.
True. I guess they've won. I mean, besides Oregon, that's won all of them.
I won 10 in a row, right?
Yeah,
that's pretty good. They're on that list of I don't want to play them right now type of teams.
Right. Yeah, that's I hate that argument and sentiment that South Carolina people kept. The argument I kept seeing from like the SEC and the South Carolina people was, no one wants to play us right now. Like, okay, so that means you should be in.
No one wants to play. No one wanted to play Kansas, or no one wants to play Baylor now.
Yeah, I was like, so let's just put those teams in then. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you lost 3 games, and 2 of which
just we're hot, we're on a heater.
Yeah,
let's let it ride.
So we should go in. Yeah. That's not how this works. Like,
no, it's not. Just because you're the loudest voice in the room doesn't mean you're always right. Says the person who's the loudest voice in this room right now. Moving on, a couple more fun stuff. Marshall, the Thundering Herd, they beat James Madison 35-33 in double overtime, and that win locked up a spot for the Herd in the Sun Belt title game where they will face Louisiana, who are
Raging Cajuns.
Thank you, the Raging Cajuns. The Raging Cajun himself, Mr. James Carville.
What happened? Blacked out.
Talk about teams that I feel like have been on a heater all year. Indiana. Their quarterback, Curtis Rourke, he tied an Indiana single-game record with 6 touchdown passes as the Hoosiers handed the Purdue Boilermakers their worst loss in school history in a 66-0 rout, which was even more impressive because it was in the snow, like bad conditions. Indiana outgained Purdue. This is an astounding number here. 582 yards to 67 yards. Purdue had 67 total yards. The Hoosiers had 30 first downs in that game. Purdue had 5. I'm shocked they even got to 5 first downs with 67 total yards. That is a beatdown of beatdowns.
He left no doubt. He said, You are not leaving us out of this playoff. I know Purdue's maybe the worst team in the country, but this is what we're going to do to them.
I mean, Purdue, though, played a lot of common opponents, but common teams that are vying for these playoff spots. They played Penn State, and they played Oregon, and they played Ohio State. They had a rough schedule. But none of those teams, they played Notre Dame. None of those teams beat them as bad as Indiana just did in a rivalry game in the elements. So that's going to mean something. The other thing I think is going to mean something, Indiana has the largest point differential of any team in the entire country.
That's wild.
Right. And again, I don't care if you played the worst schedule. Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
That
Like, if
you
you're
are
truly an
supposed to-
elite team, if you played the worst
Correct.
schedule, you beat everyone by the
Yes.
as bad as you possibly could, and that's what they did. They
That's
stomped
something that
everyone
grinds my
this year.
gears is that Indiana took care of those teams. Like, how many times, like, Notre Dame didn't take care of Northern Illinois, right? They have a weak schedule. They didn't take care of them.
And Notre Dame still finished with the second highest point differential, by the way.
Yeah, because then they decided to take care of their teams. But Ohio State didn't take care of Michigan.
No,
Alabama didn't take care of Oklahoma.
No.
Ole Miss didn't take care of Kentucky.
No, they did not.
Right? You gotta take care of those teams that are like that could trip you
supposed
up.
to
Like
take care of.
Indiana beat Michigan, right? They took care of them. I know it was a closer game, but they did what they needed to do to win that game. And then we're like, well, Michigan stinks, and then they beat Ohio State.
Yeah. So you're right. It's like that double-edged sword of you're never going to win until you get a seat at the table. So maybe this is Indiana getting their seat at the table. Who knows? NC State, their player named Hollywood Smothers. Amazing name. Hollywood Smothers. He ran in the game-winning touchdown with 25 seconds left as the Wolfpack beat UNC 35-30 and reached bowl eligibility this year and took down the Tar Heels in Mac Brown's last game as head coach. Speaking of some elements, there are some games of sweet snow going on. Brady Cook, he ran home the game-winning 30-yard touchdown scamper with less than 2 minutes left as Missouri beat Arkansas 28-21 in a very snowy Columbia. Do you know what their trophy is?
It's like the border.
The Battle Line Trophy. This thing is sweet. They literally, it's not wrought iron, but it's like metal. They molded into like this tall, of like a replica of the two states right on top of each other. Actually, that's where they sit on the map. And then the border of it on one side is red, and on the other side is gold for Missouri. It's a cool trophy. So I like that one. Last one here, right? From the FCS level. Montana's, the Grizz, Junior Bergen of Montana, he had 2 punt return touchdowns versus Tennessee State in the Grizzlies' 41-27 FCS playoff win. Bergen has 8 career punt return touchdowns, which is tied for the FCS record. Pretty amazing, right? That's nuts. Him and his Grizz will face South Dakota State in the next round. That was cool.
Is that the Jackrabbit?
Yes, it is.
Adam Vinatieri.
Also, yes, the Fighting Vinatieri's and Zach Zenners, if you will. The last thing I had here, little nugget, there were 20 Power 4 rivalry games that happened over the weekend. 11 of those games were won by the visiting team. It's kind of interesting.
Crazy.
More than 50% of them.
Crazy.
And it could have been more. Georgia Tech should have won that game, right?
Yeah.
So it could have been more. But that's a pretty remarkable statistic, I thought. Here we go. Shock and awe. What we're displaying right now is the just released college football playoff bracket for this week. It came out, as we're doing this show. And
anything on there you're upset about right now? I'm not too upset. I'm not too upset with it. I'm more upset with where the Big 12 ranks as a whole, especially BYU.
Is that Arizona State at 15?
Yes.
12.
I would have them. them.
15.
In all honesty, I would have them above Alabama.
I think Iowa State should be there too. I think Miami should be there.
Arizona State is playing really well. I don't think Miami.
What about BYU? BYU disrespect. BYU, by the way, went into SMU and beat them in Dallas. Like we don't talk about BYU. Actually has a pretty decent strength of schedule. And they went 10-2.
Here's my issue is you're gonna having Alabama as high as they are. I mean, look, we talked about this before the show. I called it. I said a 3-loss Alabama will finish ranked somewhere between 9 and 11, 8 and 12, something like that. And that's what's going to happen. That's the biggest issue is that we've predetermined spots for teams based off of nothing but talent and name alone. Again, if I was going on what happens on the field, I would have Arizona State, after what I've seen from them over the course of this year, I'd have them ranked ahead of Alabama. It wouldn't make that much of a difference, though, right? Because Alabama is still probably that 12th ranked team,
correct?
Which would push Miami down. I have an issue of Ole Miss being as high as they are because they're not. Like South Carolina should be ahead of them. BYU should be ahead of Ole Miss.
But
Ole Miss, I don't think should be in the conversation at all. except
Okay.
for the fact they started the year ranked number 5 in the country.
Ole Miss has the same number of losses as South Carolina in the same conference and beat South Carolina 27-3. That's why
I know, and I understand that, but that I would just looking at what I see on the field, South Carolina at this moment in time is a better team than them, and it's not like their win there's no disparity in terms of their wins and losses. It's 9-3, except again you bring up the crucial point that they beat them head to head. But does that necessarily mean that you have to
beat them 27-3?
I know that Alabama beat Georgia. Are we going to rank them ahead of them? You know, it's that slippery slope. It's that slippery slope. But again, Indiana. Then why is Indiana not ranked above Ohio State? Ohio State has more losses.
Indiana should be.
I agree. Indiana should be ranked higher. Indiana should be ranked higher. Arizona State should be ranked higher.
I don't like Ohio
South Carolina
State.
and BYU
Ohio State,
and
I
Iowa
think
State should be ranked higher.
Ohio State, I think, should have slipped. Pretty far.
I agree. They should have slipped further. If you're going to make Miami slip that far, you should have Ohio State slip just as far.
Absolutely.
You know, but again, you know, when you do get down to it, our issues are less with who's in and more about where they seeded them.
Correct. And it's all going to, we have the conference championship week too, so these seedings aren't going to stay the same, right?
Well, that does bring up a crucial question, though. Should you be penalizing teams in conference championship games for losing? Like, should SMU drop in the rankings if they lose to Clemson?
They're going to...
They will. They'll make them drop.
I don't mind them dropping in the rankings because of these teams that are there, but I don't think they should drop below... Maybe SMU's sitting there as number 8. I don't think they should drop below a 2-loss team that isn't playing in a championship. Like, I wouldn't punish that. They're not going to be out of the playoff, right? There's no way.
I don't know that, though. At this point,
you can't punish them for losing a championship game.
I understand that, but where they rank right now and where they just
dropped
Miami, who got their second loss, it's clear that they've said an ACC team losing their second game, we're going to bump you down very far. But right there, if they go bump down the same amount of spots, they might get bumped out by Miami themselves or Ole Miss, right? And that to me
but Ole Miss,
you shouldn't be penalizing them. They should have some earned grace by earning that conference championship appearance, because that's the whole point of this. Is you set up to make that the number one thing.
I think they will. Like the team, Miami and Ole Miss can't win any more games. They can't play any more games. Alabama can't play any more games.
Yes, that should
SMU
make a difference.
Yeah, SMU playing in this championship, there's no way they drop out of the playoff. They can't.
How about Boise State? If Boise State loses to UNLV,
yeah, they're out. Because they're
why?
at number 10.
Why? Because at that point, UNLV will get in as the 12th seed.
UNLV
and so
takes
Boise
their
State
spot.
will have 2 losses all year to the number 1 team in the country, Oregon, Oregon by 3 points, and to another playoff team. How many of these teams out here, these 2-loss teams, have 2 losses to playoff teams? They don't. So we're gonna drop Boise State just because it's Boise State. Whereas, could you imagine if Alabama were knocked out of the playoff with 2 losses, with their only 2 losses being to
playoff
Texas and Tennessee?
Yeah. No, you have a great point. I agree with you. They should not be out.
But they will be.
That should drop Alabama. They should slide into Alabama's spot.
I
guess you slide to 12 and have Arizona State be the 4. Or Iowa State, whoever wins that game.
Yeah, that's what the Big 12 champion. Well, depends on if Clemson wins, right? If Clemson wins, the Big 12 champions in the top 4.
There's a chance Boise State becomes the 3 seed.
Yeah, If that happens, right? If Boise State were to lose, UNLV gets in. UNLV would wind up as the 12th seed. Yeah. Boise State would have to hope to be one of those 5 through 11 seeds, which I think they would be deserving of.
I think they would
when you break that down
as well, because you're right. You can't. How do you punish a team?
You penalize. Yeah, that's a slippery slope because now we're not only are you punishing the team, you're rewarding teams that didn't get to their championship game.
Correct.
You're rewarding them for not playing as many challenging games.
Yeah, which I don't like.
And that's a slippery slope. Like that could actually determine something down the line. Like if you had a team going into their final game knowing that they're on the border, but hey, if we stand pat here, if we lose this game, we're going to be in. But if we win this game and then lose the next one, we could be out. We might want to just phone this game in or something, right? That, again, that's a very rare thing that could happen, but it could, right? You open things up when you start penalizing teams for trying to earn what you've told them they're supposed to earn.
Correct.
And that's dangerous there. Now, the true chaos scenario, I think, is if UNLV wins and if Clemson wins, because then it becomes, what do we do, right? Do we penalize SMU and Boise State and kick them out and then just throw the big boys in, throw Miami and throw Ole Miss in there, and everyone's happy because we have the big boys in there and we have one underdog in UNLV and we go from there? Like, do we do that? I would think that's wrong because, again, these teams, I mean, to me, Ole Miss has played their way out. I do not understand why they're ranked as high as they are. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that they have a chance to get in because they are not a good team. They are just as flawed as everyone else, and they have not earned it on the field, in my opinion, based off of what I've seen from them, right? Compared to, like, the other teams you have here, like Notre Dame and Indiana, right? They haven't earned that. So I don't like them being there, but it's still giving them that shot to just Frank Reynolds slip in, you know.
Yep. There was what I was seeing too on social media is that the 12-team playoff, people are like, this is what you guys wanted, like the 12-team playoff, and you wanted to give the little guys a chance, but what's going to happen is that, you know, underachieving Alabama and the big boys are going to get in. I'm like, the little guys are in there. Yeah. They have their chance. I'm looking at Arizona State. I'm looking at Boise State with a bye. I'm looking at Indiana. I'm looking at SMU. Like, a third of the field is the little guys. Yeah, and then you're looking at teams like Penn State's obviously they're big boys, but they've never sniffed any. Like, if they were 11-1 in a 14 playoff, I don't know if they're in. Tennessee wouldn't be in. Notre Dame, like, good luck. People hate seeing them in, right?
Yeah, it's you're right. Indiana's a prime example. Like, in years past, because of who they are, their record, they would be not in the conversation. Even at 11-1, the way they've done, there's no chance in hell that the committee would have ever ranked them in the top 4. Even if they went 12-0, there's a chance that they wouldn't even rank them in the top 4, right?
Agree. The little guys have a chance. Yes. I mean, we had Florida State last year, 13-0, and that's a big name getting left out.
There's never been more teams that have a actual shot as we sit here right now to win a national title. There's never been that many teams.
And right? the thing too that people were talking about is they want reseeding after the first round because let's say, you know, Tennessee, Ohio State, the winner of that, according to this, would play Oregon, right? And the winner of Arizona State, Penn State, would play Boise, and they're like, well, the number 1 seed is not getting, you know, the best shot, but I don't mind it because it's where you played your season at.
It's one of those things where it could wind up – each year's different, right? It could wind up where it is –
an easier path.
Yes, it very well could be. It's just the way it's set up this year. Like last year, things were different. It was very much more top-heavy. There were clear-cut 6 teams for 4 spots. Correct. And there was no real debate. It was just about who those 6 teams were. And if you expand it to 12, the only debate would have been, I think, between Missouri, Penn State, and Oklahoma for the final spot. And all 3 of those teams had blown opportunities to not put themselves in that situation. So to me, that would have been a no issue. Oh, we left Oklahoma out. We took these 2. Whatever. You had your shot, Oklahoma. Don't complain. Right? And again, you could say that for all 3 of those teams, right?
Yeah.
This year's a little different because of the amount of parity where if you really look at the standings and if you go like win-loss record, there is like no differentiation between number 5 team in the country and like number 23 team in the country. They're all 10-2, 9-3. Mm-hmm. All of them. And all of them have basically beat like each other too, or beaten comparable teams. So there's really that's where it becomes difficult. And that's rare though. Like I think that's what's giving people a lot of issue and getting upset is that, and that's not what's going to be every year. Maybe it will. Well, maybe it will. It'd be awesome if that's what every year.
People are upset.
But in years past, it's never been that way. So
yeah, people are upset because they're like, the 12 teams. There aren't 12 teams deserving of winning a national championship and all that stuff. Like, what are you talking about?
I would actually disagree based off.
Yeah, I would absolutely disagree. Like, there's more parity than ever. Like,
I mean, you talk about Oregon as the
12 teams that can win the national championship.
Yeah, you talk about Oregon as the sole undefeated team. They easily could have lost more than
to
one game.
Boise, to Ohio State. Yeah, I mean, they could have lost to Wisconsin. They could have lost.
Yes. So you're looking at, again, a lot of parity that we got to look at what happens on the
Anything
field.
can happen.
You got to take in
beautiful.
Yes, you got to take in everything.
By the way, I mean, the second this came out and I looked at the first round matchups, I got so excited. I was like, this is awesome. Mm-hmm. This is fantastic for the sport. By the way, the regular season means more than ever. Means more than it has ever before. Because there are teams playing meaningful games in November and December. We've never had that. With Tennessee playing Vanderbilt last year, no one would have been at that game because it would not have mattered.
Would have meant nothing.
It would have meant absolutely nothing. Right? Indiana, Purdue would have meant absolutely nothing. Georgia Tech pretty much would have meant nothing. We all of these games mean something. It's so awesome to see. Like Syracuse, Miami, that game meant something.
Yeah.
Right? Miami's now looking on the outside looking in. Like those games wouldn't have mattered at all. You're filling the stands now too. Well, people are glued in. Like I'm absolutely glued in watching these games because every single one of these games matters. Like, yeah, you're allotted 1 to 2, and in Alabama's case, 3 losses. But you don't want to be in that position.
No, you are still trying to win every game.
But your season's not over.
Yes. Still more games that matter.
Yeah, and it's awesome. And now we're looking at Clemson going into the ACC championship with 3 losses. Like, they have a chance to get in.
Yeah.
Like, that game, like, now the conference championships matter, right? That ACC championship game would not have mattered.
No, you're right. That's a very, very valid point is that, if you looked at this in years past, you look at these championship games, how many of them would have mattered? The Georgia-Texas game and the Oregon-Penn State game. Outside of that,
we would have been sitting here.
You're just watching for fun. You're just watching for fun.
2 Big Ten, 2 SEC teams.
Yep, the winners in, the losers probably out, and Notre Dame would be the other team in there, and you would have thrown in probably the whatever other random team, right? Yeah. And it's become there's more games matter, which ultimately should be what we are shooting for. It's
been fantastic. I think college football this year has been awesome.
Yes, it has been. Now, we're going to move on to some NFL stuff as we, wrap up our college football stuff here. NFL had their Turkey Day, which is, one of my favorite holidays of the year. It's one of the 2 exclusively American holidays that we celebrate outside of Independence Day, our 4th of July, right? So on Turkey Day, the Lions-Bears game was the game, right? That was what a heck of a odd game that was. So the Lions wound up beating Chicago 23-20 to win their 10th straight game and improve to 11-1, which is the best start in franchise history. The 10-game winning streak matches the franchise mark set in 1934 as the best win streak in franchise history. The Bears, who were down 16-0 at halftime, were driving for the win or the tie when Caleb Williams was sacked with about 30 seconds left. Instead of taking their last remaining timeout, the Bears tried to get to the line, hurry up, run a play, but the clock ran out. Williams' deep pass to whoever, like a Dunze, whatever, fell short, and the game was over. It was mind-boggling.
I understood what
the initial thought.
The initial thought was you want to use the whole field and save your timeout, but then
run another play and then see what happens.
But then they just acted like the clock was stopped or something. Like at that point, as the head coach, you have to see this and go timeout.
Yes, it was like watching that guy play Madden and he hits the button to actually have him run up to the line instead of huddling, and he doesn't know how to figure out to call a different play. He's sitting there fumbling with the controller, and then the play clock runs out and he gets a penalty. That's what it was. It was like watching a drunk college kid play Madden for the first time.
History repeats itself for the Bears again. 3rd quarterback to have 2 coaches in the first year of their career. It's organizationally bad.
Yes,
we saw this coming 2-3 weeks ago. Organizationally bad.
Yeah, I mean the Bears have lost 6 straight games now. They fired their coach. I think mostly because he doubled down on the decision not to call timeout. And if you saw that, they asked him about it in his press conference. He goes, "Yeah, we made the right decision. That was the right call there. We did the right thing, not taking that timeout." And it's like,
and you're fired.
Oh, man.
Didn't he
You're
even
fired.
say in that press conference, I'm confident you guys will see me coach on the sideline next week?
Yeah. Something like that.
Fuck off, loser.
Well, this is the
Enjoy
first
not-
time in franchise history the Bears have fired a coach in the middle of the season. First time ever in the Chicago
God.
Bears history
You gotta
that
be
they
real
fired a
bad.
coach in the middle of the season. But God, that was fireable. Especially when the eyes of the entire country are on you for this
For
one
Thanksgiving game.
Yes.
It's an in-division rival too.
Yes.
So bad. Blessed to have grown up with some wonderful situationally aware coaches. I mean, say his name on here all the time. Bill Belichick is probably the greatest situational awareness coach to ever grace the sideline, and to go from seeing something like that to just Matt Eberflus. Oh my god! It just feel like
it was
vomiting
shame.
Matt
Do you think-
Eberflus. Oh my god!
Don't kick the man when he's down.
She just got fired
Please.
from a dream job.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
do you think
But he's confident he'll be on the sideline next week.
paralysis by analysis?
No, I sincerely think what happened
Not built for
is
the
that
moment.
the plan was let's get to the line, run a play, right?
That's
the guys
what I
are too
thought,
far
yeah.
on the field.
You save your timeout.
Caleb Williams being a rookie had trouble getting the play across. It took too long, and he kept sitting there going, "Well, what's going to happen? What's going?" And eventually he froze, not because of analysis, but not knowing what's going on. In reality, what should happen is once you saw that was chaotic, even if you don't take the timeout right away, you got to take the timeout to save your rookie quarterback, who, by the way, burnt their two other timeouts unnecessarily, coming out of dead ball situations
Jesus.
in that second half. Right? They should have had all three timeouts, but he had issues with that. But that's what's going to happen with a rookie quarterback. So you have to expect these things. You can't just assume. Right? We all know what happens when you assume. And that's what I think happened. He assumed that they would get it done, and then you looked up and, oh, shit, the clock ran out. So
It's just so bad.
I mean, that's why it's fireable, right? Because that's why he got fired.
I really think it was because he doubled down and said, "Oh, we did the right thing there," and
And
the organization was just embarrassed. And you do
Yes.
not want to embarrass people who write your
Yes.
checks.
I mean, they're
Publicly embarrass the people who write your checks.
at this
right?
point. The Bears front office has to just be thinking we need to give people a reason to come to games. There are some people that I follow on Instagram and Twitter, and people that do a lot of the Barstool guys are from Chicago too, and a lot of these guys are all saying I'm selling my tickets. I don't want to go. No one wanted to go to the Thanksgiving game, understandably, because it's Thanksgiving.
It was in Detroit. Maybe that's
But,
why no one wanted to go to the game. It's in Detroit.
the week prior, I mean, no one's motivated to go because the teams just realize, the fans are realizing just what this team is. It's just bad.
They got a lot of soul searching to do up on the
and the rest of that
Chicago.
division has figured it out.
Exactly. That's what makes it worse too.
Yeah, big time.
Minnesota's the quietest 10-2 team there is. No one's talking about them.
Yeah, speaking of the Vikings, in their game this week, they took their first lead of the game with 1:13 remaining in regulation, thanks to Aaron Jones' touchdown catch from Sam Darnold, who's been pretty good for them, and kicker John Parker Romo's subsequent
Rashad
extra point
Tarkenton.
conversion as Minnesota downed the Cardinals 23-22 to move to 10-2, like you said, boy, and they are one game back of Detroit for the top spot in the NFC North division. Pretty amazing from them. Some more North division stuff in the AFC side. Russell Wilson from
Which one? NC State, Wisconsin, or collegiate? He went to collegiate, right?
yes, he did.
Assuming since he has a Wisconsin shirt on, he means Wisconsin.
That dude,
I believe he says when
a
he
whole
comes out,
pack of
a whole
Badgers.
pack of Badgers.
Yes. But Russell had 414 yards passing, which is a season high this year, and 3 touchdowns as the Steelers outdueled the Bungles 44-38 and moved to 9-3 on the season to increase their lead in that North Division. It's kind of amazing that they're winning in all different ways, right? If this is a team that's won multiple games this year just by kicking field goals, and then they win this game by lighting up the scorecard, right? So that to me is a sign of a really good team and a really well-coached team, is that you find ways to win. That's winning culture. That's that's what that is, and we've spoken at length about that with Tomlin and the Stillers. And
he continues his streak of never having a losing season.
Yes, pretty amazing.
It's official now this year.
Yeah. Speaking of the other team that they're jockeying with for AFC North division supremacy, it was the Ravens. They lost to the Eagles this past weekend. I think that was the Sunday night game, 24-19. Saquon Barkley for Philly had another 100-yard game, had 107 yards rushing, and he is on pace right now to break Eric Dickerson's single-season rushing record. So I'll only break it by like 50 yards, I think, is what he's on pace for. And granted, he has another game to play that Dickerson didn't, so that kind of like really he's on pace. Yeah, he's got that extra game, but still amazing. He's the best running back in the league right now. He's now won 8 straight games. They're 2.5 games up on Washington in the NFC East. Baltimore dropped to 8-5, and they're 1.5 games back of Pittsburgh in that AFC North division.
Motown Philly's back again.
Doing a little East Coast swing. Last note, I saw this. I thought this was kind of cool. Mark Andrews, the tight end for Baltimore, he scored his 4th career touchdown for the Ravens, which tied the franchise mark with who?
The Ravens. Well, I'd say that again.
The Ravens. Mark Andrews, tight end for the Ravens, scored his 47th career touchdown in that loss to Philadelphia on Sunday. That tied the franchise record. Who was he tied with for the Ravens franchise record? Is it another tight end?
Is it Todd Heap?
It is not Todd Heap. The Stormin' Mormon himself, it is not him.
Is it Jamal Lewis?
It is Jamal Lewis. Very good.
That would have been my first guess, but I thought there might be something with the tight end thing.
No, Jamal Lewis. Tied with that. That just goes to show how good Mark Andrews has been. Inconsistently good for them. Moving on down the Beltway, you go to Washington. They ended their 3-game losing streak with a decisive 42-19 win over the lowly Titans to run their record to 8-5. Jaden Daniels had 3 passing touchdowns, and he added another one on the ground. That's a nice way to kind of rebound from going on a little skid there.
They needed that. They needed to beat the shit out of a team.
Mm-hmm. Yep. This one probably hurts you, Jabronis, a little bit more than me, but Alec Pierce caught the potential game-winning touchdown pass with 12 seconds left, but instead of kicking the extra point, the Colts went for 2 and the win. And quarterback Anthony Richardson rushed home the conversion for a Colts 25-20 win over the Patriots in Foxborough.
They watched that Georgia game
and said we want to get the fuck out of here. Yeah.
They said we're going to take our big running quarterback and on the road, and we're going to go for the win, and we're going to end it right here, and we're going to walk out of here with the victory.
Yeah, I kind of like it. Right? You got nothing to lose over there, and
yeah, I mean
in Indy. But I know there are probably a lot of Indy fans like, stop winning. Our team really isn't that good. We need higher draft picks. But if you're really trying to develop Anthony Richardson, correct. You want to keep winning.
If you believe that's your quarterback and that's your franchise quarterback, because you had a high draft pick on him, you want to win as many games as possible, and you want to develop him and get your team feeling good for next year, and then fill in the pieces, because then you'll know exactly what pieces you need to fill in. Right now, there's so many, right? If you keep winning and stacking wins and like feeling a little bit better and being competitive in these games, you know exactly where you need to go in the offseason, and quarterback isn't one of them.
Yeah, I agree. With the young QB, you want to just win as much as possible. Moving on to the NFC South, Chase McLaughlin connected on the game-tying 51-yard field goal to force overtime, and then he put the game away with the winning 30-yard field goal with 2 minutes and 50 seconds left in OT to lift the Tampa Bay Buccaneers past the Panthers 26-23 and into a tie for first place in the NFC South with the Falcons.
His name's Tom, and he plays in Tampa Bay.
Yes, thank you. And this last one is specifically just for our Guatemalan viewership. The Denver Broncos fullback, number 20, Michael Burton, his 10th year in the league from Rutgers. He scored his 2nd career touchdown with a fullback dive from the 1-yard line in the Broncos win over the Browns on Monday night. They went on to eventually defeat Cleveland 41-32 despite 497 yards passing and 4 touchdowns from Jameis Winston. Winston did throw 2 pick sixes, including the game-sealing one to Jaquan McMillan with under 2 minutes to go, as Cleveland was driving for the win in that game. That was like the Jameis Winston roller coaster all wrapped in one game, just looking like on point for so many passes, and then you get the one mistake. The 4 touchdowns, the 3 picks just sums up the
Dude,
man.
did you see his press
497 yards
conference at the
is a
end?
lot.
Did you see his press conference after the game?
No.
More Jameis Gold, baby. He was up there, and they were asking him about it. He was like, I mean, it was a great game, but Heavenly Father, please deliver me from pick sixes. It's great. Love Jameis.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
He was fun to watch. He was really good for like the vast majority of that game, but it's amazing how, especially in football, maybe more than any other sport, how like one instant it just could arguably the game's over, right?
Yeah.
Anything NFL-wise before we move on to some indoor sports? All right, we're going to move on to the hardwood, the NCAA basketball hardwood to be exact. First, I'm going to start with your West Virginia Mountaineers, boy.
Hell yeah.
They enjoyed their time down in the Bahamas. They enjoyed it so much so that they went on and played all 3 of their games in overtime. So they defeated the number 3 ranked team in the country, Gonzaga, in overtime, 86-78. Then they fell to a very, very much improved Louisville team, 79-70 in overtime.
That was a rock fight. That was Big East. That was the old Big East rock fight.
Charlie and Mac throwing rocks at each other. And then their finale in that battle for Atlantis, they took down number 24 Arizona 83-76. Pretty good weekend for the Mountaineers.
The coach is amazing.
Basketball
awesome.
wise, maybe not football wise, but
basketball
wise.
Football, we're looking for a new coach.
Yes,
but no, basketball. DeVries is awesome. I remember I watched the first game they played Robert Morris. And I'm like, well, they're gonna win, but let me just watch and see how this team works and see who this new coach is and what style he wants to run and everything. First 5 seconds in that game, I was like, this coach is good. I was like, this is different than anything I've ever seen West Virginia play. They're
a lot
connected.
Of ball movement.
They're connected. They communicate on defense. They play hard defense without fouling the hell out of you.
And they can shoot.
His son hit like the first 3 of the year, and I'm like, oh, that looked different.
Someone can shoot?
I was like, they got multiple guys that can shoot. I think it's a team that, with him as a coach, will get better and better as the year goes because they also got blasted by Pitt, and Pitt is very good. Pitt's an underrated team. Yeah, I really like that Pitt team.
Speaking of Pitt, they did move into the rankings this week, I believe. Good. But Pitt's Zach Austin had 16 points off the bench, including 5 for 8 from downtown. So he literally scored all his points.
Scorers, man.
He scored all of his points but one, from 3-point range.
In the bucket.
Austin hit the game-winning, buzzer-beating 3 in overtime as the Panthers came back to beat Ohio State 91-90 in Columbus. And somehow that wasn't the worst result in the capital city of Ohio from this past weekend. Yeah. I wonder what the other one was. Yeah, Michigan, Wolverines. Louisville, you mentioned them earlier. They opened their campaign in Nassau with an 89-61 trouncing over the Indiana Hoosiers, and then followed that up with that aforementioned OT win over West Virginia, where Wisconsin transfer Chucky Hepburn had 32 points. Did you know he was on Louisville?
I did. Well, when I was watching, I was like, that dude was on Wisconsin last year.
Yes, he was. But the Cardinals did fall to Oklahoma 69-64 in the title game there. They are 5-2 on the year. Do you know how many games they won last year?
5.
8. They won 8 games all of last year. They have 5 now.
You know who their coach is? It's the old Charleston coach.
Really? Good.
That's why they're good.
Yes. It's amazing what the difference coaching makes is so
remarkable.
Hard to quantify, because it's hard to quantify.
Yeah.
Right?
Because I liked West Virginia.
Exact science.
Yeah, West Virginia had that debacle with Huggins last year, and then Josh Eilert took over. And I like Josh Eilert, and I'm listening to his stuff, and I'm like, he's right on everything, but for some reason it's not connecting. It's not going through. There's a different level of just being a leader of these guys or getting through your message that you need to get through. Now watching a West Virginia team, I'm excited to watch the games because I know they're not going to be fouling constantly. I know they're not going to get stagnant on offense and just chuck something up. And I know it's going to be a game that's actually good basketball to watch.
Yeah.
The reason it was so bad, Huggins, he has philosophy and he was successful. He went to a Final Four with it, but God, it was tough to watch. And then now, I watched DeVries as a coach. I'm like, this is basketball. I'm watching basketball in Morgantown. This is great.
Shocker, right? Speaking of some good basketball to watch, Florida. I don't know if you've seen them play. They had a dominant week last week. They improved to 8-0, but they had started with a 75-58 win over Wake Forest, and then an 88-51 dismantling of the Wichita State Wheat Shockers, which is really impressive to me. I know those aren't like the cream of the crop teams, but those also aren't teams that you would assume you can blow out by 30 points, and they did, right? So they might be a sleeper team to kind of
the SEC is
slide in there.
The SEC basketball is what their football conference wishes they were. Their SEC basketball is insane.
I like that. SEC basketball is what they wish their football was. You go down to any state south of North Carolina and say that, you're probably going to get an egg thrown at you.
And
or a brick.
Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not true.
Ha! Dropping cracked eggs of knowledge over here. Moving on. San Diego State, they edged number 6 Houston 73-70 in overtime as Miles Bird and Nick Boyd combined for 30 points, 13 rebounds, and 9 assists for the Aztecs. San Diego State just always seems to have all these guys that they can do everything really well, but no one who's just like super elite at something. Just a roster full of dudes that play ball together really well and fit roles together really well. And I mean, to beat Houston, Kelvin Sampson's one of the best coaches in the country. His accumulation of talent, and you talk about discipline and decision-making and togetherness, that's what you have at Houston. And so to beat them anywhere is really, really impressive, in my opinion. Because, again, Kelvin Sampson is one of my favorite coaches that's currently out there in the country. You watch his team play, they're so unselfish with the basketball. They're so disciplined defensively. They can all shoot, which I love. And they can guard every position. They're so tough. They're
probably the
versatile.
toughest. They're probably the toughest team in the country. Like defensively, mentality, everything. Like they're always so tough.
Yes.
In every sense of the word.
A win over them, that's a big deal.
That's huge. Yeah, it's a big deal. That's a huge deal. These tournaments are massive for certain teams come bubble time.
Yeah. Speaking of that tournament, that San Diego State and Houston were in, that was the Players Era Festival Championship, and Oregon went on to win that championship. They are 8-0 now. They had 10-point win over number 20 Texas A&M. Then they followed that with a 10-point win over San Diego State, aforementioned Aztecs, and then finished that tournament with a 83-81 win over number 9 Alabama, thanks to Nate Biddle's game-winning putback with 4.4 seconds left. Oregon, another great coach up there, I forget his name, but
I know, I can see his face.
Yes, really underrated coach, because they're a team that every year they get into the tournament and they will make a run. Dana Altman, fantastic coach up there in Eugene. Oregon 8-0, which means their football and basketball programs are combined 19-0, 20-0,
20-0, yeah.
It's pretty awesome. Not going to lie. Anything basketball-wise before we move on?
Yes.
Oh
my God, yes. So, the University of Kentucky doing this awesome thing, you guys will appreciate it because it'll remind you of a certain episode of Seinfeld. Where, you know how like a lot of arenas will have like the Kiss Cam and like stuff like that on their Jumbotron? The University of Kentucky's doing this thing called the Snackwords Cam. And they're just sniping people taking down snacks.
They cover a lot of court.
There's an invention. You ever heard of it? It's called the napkin.
Yeah, they're getting some stanza-esque shots of people. Oh my gosh. If someone ever got a video of me and put it up on the Jumbotron of me taking down a glizzy, I'm suing them. I don't care. It needs to be litigation.
I didn't see any cameras there. Oh, it was
right there. Like, oh my gosh, it's insane. You
don't think she'd break up with you over that?
Why not?
She'd really be that vain? Why not? I wouldn't.
I've been devouring these content that people are posting of the Jumbotron at Rupp Arena during Snackwords cams. Oh my gosh, it's so funny. That's all I got.
Thank you, Kamala, with the content that everyone is looking for.
Yeah, you're welcome. You know.
That's going to take us to our Mimosa Minute this week, brought to you as always by Main & Co., the creators of the Modern Mimosa. Follow them on Instagram at main.co and visit them online at mainsip.com to order your Modern Mimosas today. Maine and Co. championing women's athletics since 2020. Our Mimosa Minute this week, I believe, boy, you had the honors.
Yeah, there was some women's college basketball this last weekend. It was a number 5 versus number 12 matchup with Texas Longhorns and my West Virginia Mountaineers. Texas, the number 5 team in the country, ended up winning that game 78-73. At one point, it was a 1-point game with 43 seconds left. They pulled it off despite the efforts of my girl, JJ Quinterly, who dropped 29
points.
Texas moves up to number 4 in the country. West Virginia fell to number 15. But that was some good basketball. But the issue is with the women's college basketball right now, at this point in the year, they're not on TV anywhere. Even on, I believe that was a Sunday game, and that was a championship. Like, it was one of those tournament championships. It was on like ESPN Plus.
That's how they get you, man. They make you have to buy the subscription just so you could watch that.
Yeah. So people were a little upset that they couldn't watch that game, which understandable. There's an issue with college basketball at this point in the season of not being on TV anywhere.
Yeah, because it's kind of. I know Jay Billis has always said this. Like, he's like, people will say, "Oh, we can't focus on college basketball until the football season's over," and he's like, "Why?
Why?
What? Why? That doesn't make
any
sense."
You can easily do it. There are times to do it. Like, ESPN is running nothing on Sundays. Like, women's college basketball plays a lot of Sunday games.
Yes, they do.
You can easily put these games on ESPN, ESPN2, or even ESPNU. No problem. So, but
you know what really grinds
nice
my gears?
Yeah, it was a nice top 15 matchup. So you don't get to see a lot of that, I think, in women's college basketball. There's a lot of blowouts.
Yeah.
With these teams. So this is like a good competitive game, even.
That's for you, Kamlo.
Yeah, that was a good
right up to the microphone. Yeah. But no, yeah, I agree. It would have been nice to be able to turn that game on.
Yeah.
And watch it. But
that's all I got.
Your Mountaineers watch out for them. Sneaky.
They're good.
Yep.
That coach is legit, Kellogg, and they play that Press Virginia we talked about last week.
Yeah. Moving on to some NHL and NBA stuff. Again, you can still focus on that stuff too while there's football going on. But I'm going to start in the NHL just for your Capitals, Kamlo. I'm sure you saw this over the weekend, but they were down 4-2 entering the third period against the Islanders. The Caps scored 2 to send the game to OT, where Jacob Chychrun, I can never get his name. Chychrun. Jacob Chychrun netted these defensemen, right?
Sure is.
Netted the game-winning tally a minute 20 into the extra session for a 5-4 Capitals win. The Capitals also got their 7th straight road win a couple days later. Actually, might have been the next night, with a 6-5 win over the Devils Saturday.
Oh, Devil.
El Diablo.
And they continue their trend of winning, they win games when they score 4 or more goals.
Which you should in hockey.
Yeah, you absolutely should. But, the amount of games where they've scored 4 or more goals, staggering to look at.
And they're doing this without Ovechkin, who has been out the last week or so.
He skated yesterday or this morning
on a broken leg.
He
he is a hockey player.
It wasn't practice. He laced him up, was out there in just sweatpants and a hoodie, just skating around the ice. But it's good to see. He hasn't worn a boot or anything the whole time, so people were anticipating 4 to 6 weeks.
That's pretty. Again, hockey player. Hockey player breaks his leg 4 to 6 weeks. A schmuck like us breaks his leg, 6 to 8 months, right?
You don't even need to go to break. Deep bruised, my man.
Yeah.
Can he hurt it anymore?
Contusion.
No, but it would be very painful.
Bruising a leg is a hell of a long way from the heart. Thanks,
yes.
Coach. I'll get him going.
I'll clean up.
Yep. Moving on, my New York Rangers, they snapped a 5-game losing streak with a 4-3 win over the Canadiens, thanks to Kaapo Kakko's power play goal with 24 seconds left in regulation. I believe the Rangers went on to drop their next game, so the good feelings didn't last long. But, just hoping that if you're going to go into a lull, this is the time of year to do it. You don't want this to happen in March or April.
Jeez, they lost 5 straight at one point.
I just said they snapped a 5-game losing streak. Yeah,
that's bad.
Especially for the talent they have on that roster. Moving on, after the Flyers surrendered the game-tying goal with 20 seconds left in regulation, Matvei Michkov, who is is he even 19? He's so young. He registered his third overtime game-winning goal of the season, which means of his career because he's a rookie, in the Flyers 3-2 win over the Blues over the weekend. He's right, Kamala, Michkov, maybe 19, if that.
Something like that.
To have three OT game winners already under your belt is pretty remarkable. Torts has got to be loving that kid over there.
How can you not?
In Philadelphia. Jake DeBrusk, moving on, he completed his hat trick with the game-winning goal in overtime as the Canucks defeated the Red Wings 5-4 Sunday in Detroit. It's the second straight win in overtime for Vancouver as they defeated the Buffalo Sabres in overtime 4-3 on Friday. I didn't realize Jake DeBrusk played for Vancouver. Vancouver's another sneaky team. They were really good last year when they were under the radar. They got a lot of pieces over there.
They made some good improvements in the offseason too. The Canadian teams as a whole, I think, are going to be playoff contenders, with the exception of maybe like Toronto.
What?
No, I don't. I just don't like Toronto.
Yeah, how could you not? The Canadiens stink. Toronto does have, arguably the best American.
You didn't ask about the Leafs game? Must be American.
Yeah.
He just came back, scored the opening goal of the game in his return from injury. Austin Matthews
trying to hit that 70 mark.
Yeah, Austin Matthews is awesome. By the way, moving on to a new team, Utah, the Utah Hockey Club. They scored the late equalizer versus Edmonton, but Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, the Nuge for the Oilers, he scored the overtime winner to give the defending Western Conference champs the 4-3 victory over the Hockey Club. Edmonton still looks just as dangerous as long as you have McDavid on the ice. You're gonna. So nice to see that Nugent-Hopkins got that because he's a under the radar, very good player.
He's a locker room guy.
He helps any team win.
Yeah, I love the Nuge.
Yep.
We were high on him during the playoffs. At least I was.
He's a good player.
Yeah.
The last thing here, Trevor Zegras, he scored the decisive shootout snapshot past Linus Ullmark for the 4-3 Ducks win over the Senators. If you've never seen Trevor Zegras play, you got to see Trevor Zegras play. He is one of the more electric players. Yes, you're going to see some.
See the Michigan.
Yeah, you might see some turnovers because you're trying to do too much, but man, the good you get very much outweighs the bad. He's fun to watch. You got to watch him, Trevor Zegras, if you get a chance. I know it's hard because he plays for the Ducks, but man, is he an electric player. Anything else hockey-wise before we move on to some NBA?
It's a lot easier to watch the Ducks now that they're in those sweet-ass jerseys.
I still wish they could revert back to the awesome purple and teal colors.
Yeah, I don't know why they like this color scheme so much. I'm not a fan of it.
Do you think there's some trademark thing
for the
colors
purple
too?
And teal?
You can't use that. You can use the logo now, but you can't use the original colors or you can use the original colors, but you can't use the logo.
I'll look into it.
Yeah, look into it.
I don't know. Or are they just trying? Are they saying, oh well, the purple and teal is just so 90s, we can't go back to that? It's that looks better than the.
It looks way better than
weird orange you got going there. But
orange.
thank goodness they went back to that original logo because all the stuff they had in between there is not the potential for awesomeness is so there with them. It is kind of disappointing that we haven't had that. Moving on to NBA stuff right now. Down 12 entering the fourth quarter versus the Celtics. The Cleveland Cavaliers' Donovan Mitchell scored 20 points just in that fourth quarter. Didn't miss a shot from the field or from the free throw line. Had a perfect quarter to lead Cleveland to a 115-111 victory over the defending champs. A very much needed victory, in my opinion, for Cleveland, who had dropped a couple games, including one to Boston not that long ago. But I think that game proved that Cleveland is, their start is no fluke. They are a legitimate contender to the Celtics in the East. And maybe the only legitimate contender, to be honest, right? Next, out to the West, in a matchup of the top two teams in the Western Conference, you had the Rockets. Yes, the Rockets, top two in the
Thunder?
standings. They edged the Thunder. Yes, the Thunder. Those are the top 2 teams in the standings. The Rockets edged the Thunder 119 to 116 thanks to 38 points from the incomparable Fred VanVleet. 38 points. You know Fred VanVleet from the
Wichita State,
Shockers,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then they got 20 points, 14 boards, and 9 assists from Alperen Şengün, who I had mentioned before is a stud. He is someone to look out for. No coincidence, I think, that Houston is doing this right now. But pretty good for them. Another young stud out in San Antonio, Victor Wembanyama. He recorded his 3rd career triple-double with 34 points, 14 rebounds, and 11 assists as the Spurs defeated the Kings 127 to 125. The Spurs are already halfway to their win total from all of last year, sitting at 11-9. That's the improvement you want when you invest in a kid like Wembanyama. And I don't think it's any coincidence that they're doing this after they got Chris Paul. Chris Paul wins. He just wins. It's crazy to me that he's been on so many teams in his career because he is one of the best point guards in the history of the NBA. But, this is the difference that leaders make and the difference that a leader from that position makes. They're about to unlock all the talent that is sitting there in San Antonio. Moving on, James Harden had 39 points, 11 assists, and 9 rebounds to outduel 3-time NBA MVP Nikola Jokic. Right, 3 times he's won 2 in a row, then missed out on another one. But Jokic had 28 points, 14 boards, and 11 assists as the Clippers down the Nuggets 126-2. Still, if you're giving me a 7-game series, Denver's going to win that series if you pitted those 2 teams against each other. But that is kind of the fun part of the one-off game is that James Harden's heroics there can lift you. In the last one here, DeAndre Hunter from
UVA.
Thank you. He led the way for the Hawks off the bench with 22 points, 4 of 7 from downtown, as Atlanta beat the woeful New Orleans Pelicans 124 to 112 to run Atlanta's win streak to 4 games. They're playing some pretty good ball right now. I think one of those wins is against the aforementioned Cleveland Cavaliers, by the way. So Atlanta playing some good basketball right now. Anything else basketball-wise before we move on to our final segment?
No, sir.
Nope.
I love it. So that's going to take us to our last segment of the evening, our favorite segment, brought to you as always by One Legacy Title and Escrow in Jacksonville, Florida. Visit them at onelegacyflorida.com to see how they can help you with your next house closing. You can also follow them on Instagram at One Legacy Florida. Remember, One Legacy Title and Escrow, your legacy matters. Our favorites this week, we went with our favorite college mascots. All right, so not nicknames. Right, it has to be the mascot. Right, the man behind the mask, as they like to say. All right, so does anyone want to start off with who they put?
Go. Stevie
Conlo.
didn't jump up right away.
I didn't jump on it. I wanted Kamala to go because we talked about this before the show, and I feel like Kamala knows half of mine anyway.
I got a good feel for you're going, and I think I got Nick down too. I spent some time and thought about it. I think I'm good for at least 3 out of 5 on Nick's. All right, so for me, honorable mention, I'm gonna go with Rivalry, the Texas A&M mascot. Yes, highest ranking member in the Corps of Cadets. It's technically a 5-star general, which is awesome. So, I mean, she started out years and years ago. Rivalry was a rescue dog by the Aggie Cadets who was hit by a car, and they rescued the dog. And then had a fundraiser for, canine dogs, for, law enforcement dogs, canines, ended up raising some money and then paid $100 to get Rivalry promoted to be a 5-star general. And it's just an absolutely beautiful dog.
Yeah. And brand new plastic hip.
Yeah. So Rivalry, honorable mention. Number 5, we're going with Pay Dirt Pete from University of Texas at El Paso.
Yes.
We're going with Pay Dirt Pete.
The Miners.
Number 4, I'm going with Friar Dom from Providence.
Oh, yes.
You fellas from Providence?
Are you a cop?
Yeah, we're going with Friar Dom. Number 3, some people I've heard them refer to him as Puddles. I prefer to call him the Oregon Duck. We're going with Oregon Duck.
He doesn't have an official name.
Yeah.
Just the
I
duck.
have seen a lot of people over the last year start calling him Puddles. I don't like it.
I don't like that.
Just the Oregon
It's too
duck.
soft.
He's
That-
Donald Duck, is
I
what
need
he
some
is.
edge. It's some edge in my mascot.
That duck is everywhere, and he is doing the damn thing. That duck is a savage. I'm all in on Oregon Duck. Number 2, I kind of went with a 2A, 2B because I was anticipating some pushback on having a live animal in my list. I thought for sure you were going to give me shit for not having actual mascots and having
He is
like,
a
living-
live bear. He will literally rip your face off.
So I went with 2A. I went with Mike the Tiger from LSU. And then in the anticipation of Nick griefing me for it, I threw in Albie the Tiger from Auburn. So I just like tigers. I mean, anyone that knows me knows I
You got one
really
sitting
enjoy
behind you.
tigers. It's just a majestic and regal creature.
Fuck the tiger.
And
We all
number
do
one,
stupid shit when we're drunk, you know.
number one, to be known as the Rowdy Red. But since then, he's changed and transformed into something bigger, better, and stronger. We're going with the Radford Highlander. Let's go Highlanders.
Oh, Highlanders.
Gay porn hard! Go with the Radford Highlander, baby. That's my list. I'll
good.
hang up and listen.
Please hang up, yeah.
All right. I got one honorable mention. I'm going to go with the Florida State Seminole. That is awesome. It's the best entrance in sports, in my opinion. Coming out with the horse, the flaming spear into the ground. I absolutely love
Thank
that.
you, she rando.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 5, going in college basketball. How about St. Joe's Hawk?
Okay.
Our cousin
Hawk
actually went to
never
St. Joe's.
dies.
Hawk never dies. Do you know this, Kamlo?
Mm-mm.
The person in the mascot suit has to go to the games and from start to finish in their Hawk uniform has to flap their arms like wings
Without break.
without stopping the entire time.
Oh, watch it next
What?
time. If you
Anytime
ever
St.
put a
Joe's,
yes,
if you have like ESPN Plus or something and you can see a St. Joe's game, go watch it and just look at or
Find
go
the
to
mascot
YouTube right
first.
now. Go to YouTube right now and go look at the Hawk, like St. Joe's, the Hawk never dies, and this person is literally just doing this.
Shoulders would collapse.
It is one of the more hilarious things. They needed to be on this list.
I think don't they get a full scholarship if they do it or something? Or at least a part. They get
Oh my
tuition
gosh.
paid for if they're if
The wings are
Hawk.
connected too. That makes it so much harder.
the Hawk never
The
dies.
Hawk never dies. It's a beautiful tradition in sports, and such a
He's
random one.
struggling here. He's really just like, let him fall. Let him fall. My gosh, dude, in the face of that mascot, he looks miserable. What are we doing? The hardest
Beautiful.
working mascot in college
Yes.
sports.
Yes, they deserve to be on this list. Number 4, I'm going with what's on Nick's t-shirt, Bucky Badger.
There it is.
Yeah, iconic mascot. Always a great mascot. And the Badger is one of the fiercest animals in the animal kingdom.
Pound for pound.
Yeah. Number 3, I'm going with a much lesser known mascot, the Western Kentucky Hilltopper.
Very good. Yeah.
It is the closest thing we have in college sports to the Philly Fanatic.
You mean the Frenetic? Philly
The Fanatic, yeah. His name's the Fanatic, but I'm going to get sued by Major League Baseball, so I call him the Frenetic. Yeah, the Western Kentucky Hilltopper, if you haven't seen that, it's just a big red blob. Yeah, it's great.
It's terrifying.
Number 2, I'm going with my West Virginia Mountaineer. That is a big deal if you become the Mountaineer. I actually knew one of them. That is a big deal. You get, like, all the perks of the West Virginia. Like, you have to be from West Virginia. You have to have a certain grade point average. You have to, like, it is a huge deal. There's also, when I first got to West Virginia, the Mountaineer, the second he was done, they transferred the mascot to the next person at the end of the basketball season. The second he was done with it, he took the gun and went hunting and killed a black bear with the actual gun.
Oh my
He
god!
he actually put live ammo in
Be a
there.
black powder rifle. Oh my gosh!
Gotta be something illegal about that.
Oh, probably.
At least in 9 states and like 4 other countries. But
Yeah, the university wasn't happy with him, but it was also like, this is like
West Virginia.
Coolest shit. Like, this is West
The
Virginia.
most West
Mountaineers. This is
Virginia
awesome.
thing you could do.
Yeah,
The sad thing is that you don't really ever eat bear. It's riddled with worms.
people
Just like
eat
that
it.
raccoon meat.
People
Yes.
eat it.
It's human flesh.
That in which you ate
Your
That was your
taste
teeth.
buds have just savored.
was human meat.
You got the hunger.
Raccoon meat. Bullshit, Frank. Number 1. Out there in Provo, Utah, Cosmo the Cougar. I mean, he does things that no mascot should ever be able to do.
It's insane. Like, that mascot needs to like get recruited by like Barnum and Bailey's or something like that. You know, like some sort of circus act.
I'm amazed at what the stuff he's able to do. And of course, like, you have to keep the mascot head like the secret. Like, every now and then the head falls off, and there's just a scramble to like cover the guy's face and the head, and like grab the mascot head and put it back on, and, like throwing him out there like Secret Service.
Yeah.
That's my list. I'll hang up and listen.
I love it.
List.
I love it. So I would like to preface it. I did not include any live animals.
Knew it.
Yeah,
and
we knew
no
we knew you wouldn't.
actual people. So that excluded the Mountaineer, the Seminole, the Leprechaun at Notre Dame.
The
Knew
Red
you would
Raider.
do that too.
You gotta be in a costume, man, because
Dude.
that's the real work that's going down. That is what
told
the people
you he was
want.
going to get purist
I
on
knew,
us.
yeah.
That is what that's a true mascot, not some dude wearing putting a shirt on and saying I'm
What?
t-shirt on. You got to be sweating your ass off, working your tail off.
You got to
in
think
that
if you're a mascot, you
disgusting-
got a responsibility.
Yeah, in that disgusting suit, that is a mascot to me.
Man, it's Spanish. What are you doing, man? Put your head back here. Dude, this suit's crazy hot, man.
You got to be in the suit. I'm sorry. So my honorable mentions were 2 things that don't really have, category. Like they're things, but they're not things. The boy said one of them, the Western Kentucky Big Red Hilltopper, who is just a big red blob. It's awesome. It's awesome. And the other is the Syracuse Orange, which is just a big orange circle out there.
I'm off to a hot start.
Number 5, I have Cosmo Kramer the Cougar from BYU, like
Okay.
the boy just referenced. No need to say any more about it. He touched on all the things there. Number 4, Cocky from South Carolina. That one big
Damn.
cock roaming the sidelines out there.
I
Pretty
forgot
hilarious,
about
pretty
that
awesome.
one.
So
Yep,
South
okay.
Carolina's Cocky. Number
Does
3.
Jacksonville State not have?
No, they do. I think he's also called Cocky. The Chanticleers, Coastal Carolina, if you're wondering, because of the other fighting chickens. Their mascot, I believe his name is Chauncey the Chanticleer.
What is a Chanticleer?
It's a gamecock.
Which is a fancy.
It's a
Word for
French
a gamecock.
way of saying a fighting chicken. Yeah.
What you want is a Savannah accent. Where it sounds like molasses is rolling out of your mouth.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy Bernard. Big Red Bear. That's Big Red.
It's Big Red Bear.
Big Red Bear. Almost. We should have had that clip cut. I knew there was
Watched
something
it
I
before
we
we
watched,
watched
yeah.
it before you got
That's
on.
Big Red Bear.
That's Big Red Bear.
Number 3, the St. Joe's Hawk. The Hawk never dies. Like the
Okay.
boy said, the next time you have a chance, just flip on a St. Joe's basketball game just so you can see the Hawk.
And just look in the corner.
Just
find
you
the
gotta
Hawk.
find him off the corner of the bench. Just doesn't stop. Right. Number 2, the Stanford Tree.
Why?
Oh!
Come on.
It is the best thing that those nerds in Palo Alto have ever come up with.
I
Forget
almost
Google,
went with the tree
Forget
for
all that
you.
crap. The Stanford Tree is elite because
I
it makes
hate that mascot.
it's so ridiculous.
Fuck.
It's awesome. The Stanford Tree is phenomenal.
I hate that freaking mascot.
You are a jabroni of jabronis. Then that
Ask
is
Stevie.
not.
Ask Stevie. I pitched
He did.
Stanford Tree.
But I thought he would have a more thought process closer to mine and say that the mascot's just stupid.
it's
Yeah.
stupid.
You
Awesome.
think you know
Again,
a guy.
the best thing to ever come out of Palo Alto, and that includes
John Elway,
Ken
Tiger Woods.
Stabler, Tiger, and Google. The Stanford Tree, right? Because I think Sergey Brin and whoever went to Stanford who invented Google. Why don't
Sure.
you Google who invented Google to just give them more money?
I think I'll go to Ask Jeeves.
Oh, thanks. Bing?
Yeah.
And number 1 is the aforementioned Bucky Badger. He is the best mascot. He is the perfect mascot because he combines the cuddliness and welcoming of that felt suit, but also the ferociousness and intimidation of that badger that you want. So he is the perfect mascot. There's a reason when they used to do like mascot challenges. Excuse me.
Let's do.
I was trying to hold that in. It came out. Sorry.
Yeah.
But when they used to do the mascot challenges, Bucky would win every time because he's the best mascot there is.
Dude, okay.
And I'll
so
hang up and listen.
Here's what I had for you, Nick.
Okay.
I had Syracuse Orange in your. I listed 6, and I didn't say which one I thought would be honorable mention, but I had Syracuse Orange in there. I had Goldie Gopher from University of Minnesota. That just seems like something you would enjoy.
No, never, because they are Wisconsin's rivals.
I had Brutus Buckeye.
Hell no! You know how much I despise Ohio
State. For
State.
sure you would have Brutus Buckeye. All right, and then top 3 is where I thought I had you pegged. I had Benny the Beaver.
He almost made the cut. Very close. Benny was very close.
I said Nick is going to pick Benny Beaver, and he's going to say it's hilarious.
It is hilarious. That beaver is fucking funny.
I had the UVA Caveman.
He's not a good mascot. I'm sorry.
And then I had Bucky Badger.
I almost had the Wichita State Woo Shock, the Shocker. That thing is terrifying.
That is terrifying.
Thought for sure I would have. I thought I was easily going 3 for 5 here.
Oklahoma State's Pistol Pete. He almost made the cut. Because to me, he's the original Pistol Pete. There's like 1,000 Pistol Petes.
It's got nothing on Pay Dirt Pete.
Okay, but a couple other hilarious ones that I found. The UC Irvine Peter the Anteater. I don't know if you've seen that thing. That is hilarious. UC Irvine Peter the Anteater. App State Yosef the Mountaineer. Because he's an actual, like, not the person. He's in a costume with the bushiest beard you could ever have. And my favorite.
Akron Zips.
Oh, the kangaroo?
We missed the kangaroo.
Well, you know who also is a kangaroo that I almost put? Is VMI.
VMI's mascot's kangaroo. That's beautiful. That's a sweet mascot for UTEP.
The best one is Campbell.
Oh, the camel.
Gaylord the Camel is his name.
I
shit you not. Gaylord the Camel from Campbell. That is the mascot.
Yeah.
That one was close to.
Missed opportunity with the zip. I should have gotten that one on there. That's my fault. That one's on me.
It's tough.
I'll take that one.
All right. Anything else before we wrap this debacle up?
No, let's wrap it up.
Mercifully for the viewers and listeners. All right. That's going to do it here for us at What Caught My Eye. As always, I am your host, Coach Nick Vesci. Just for the boy Stephen Vesci and the man Stephen Conlow. Don't forget to follow us on all of our socials at WCME_sports. It's on X, Instagram, and Facebook. Our episodes drop every Wednesday at noon on Spotify and YouTube. And you can visit us on our website at WCMEsports.com. As always, be decent to each other. Have a good one. We will see you next time. Take care, Guatemala.